ATA for finally snapping about my kids being sent to the kids' table every Christmas? I, 36F, have been married to my husband, 38M, for 14 years. For all 14 of those years, my mother-in-law has hosted and controlled Christmas dinner. And when I say controlled, I mean everything: the menu, the schedule, and most importantly, the seating chart. Every single Christmas, without fail, my 3 kids, 13M, 11F, 9M, are sent to the so-called kids' table. The kids' table is not a cute little table in the corner. It's a folding table set up in the basement. No decorations. No music. Just a TV on in the background and whatever leftovers make it down there. Meanwhile, upstairs, there's the main table. Linen tablecloth. Candles. Real plates. And seated right there with the adults? My sister-in-law's children. Her kids are 14 and 10. Apparently, they're mature enough to sit upstairs and be part of the family conversation. Mine, according to my MIL, have too much energy and would be distracting. I've tried to let it go over the years. I told myself it was just one day, that the kids didn't care, that it wasn't worth starting drama over Christmas. But this year, something felt different. My oldest, who's 13, asked me quietly, "Why don't Grandma want us upstairs with everyone else?" I didn't have a good answer. I noticed my ML personally escorting my SL's kids to their seats at the main table, smiling and fussing over them. Then she waved my kids toward the basement like she was directing traffic. No discussion. No explanation. Just assumed compliance. I looked at my husband. He looked uncomfortable but said nothing. So I bit my tongue. Again. But sitting there at the adult table, hearing laughter, watching my SL's kids being included while mine were literally out of sight, something in me finally snapped. This has been happening for 14 years. Not once has my ML rotated the seating. Not once has she asked how we felt about it. And not once has she treated our kids the same as her daughters. I don't know if I'm overreacting, but for the first time, I'm seriously considering not going next year at all. And now I'm wondering, am I the asshole for being upset that my kids are always banished to the basement while their cousins get a seat at the main table? After dinner was served, I went downstairs to check on my kids. They were sitting around that wobbly folding table, eating off mismatched plates. My youngest had ketchup smeared on his sleeve. My daughter was scrolling on her phone, earbuds halfway in. My oldest barely touched his food. It hit me then, this wasn't a fun kids' table. This was where you send people you don't really want around. When I asked if they were okay, my 13-year-old shrugged and said, "It's fine. We're used to it." That sentence hurt more than anything else. I went back upstairs and tried to enjoy myself, but I couldn't stop watching my sister-in-law's kids laughing with the adults, being asked about school, sports, plans. My mother-in-law kept refilling their drinks and telling everyone how grown up they were. At some point, my ML clinked her glass and announced dessert. That's when I stood up. I said, as calmly as I could, "Why are my kids always downstairs while SAL's kids sit up here?" The room went dead quiet. My ML blinked like she didn't understand the question. Then she laughed lightly and said, "Oh, don't be silly. It's just easier this way. Your kids are louder." I replied, "They're kids. So are hers." My sister-in-law suddenly got very interested in her napkin. My husband cleared his throat and said, "Mom, maybe we could move the kids upstairs this year?" That was the first time he'd ever said anything. My ML's smile disappeared. She said, "This is how we've always done it. I don't see why you're making a scene on Christmas." I felt my face burn. I told her I wasn't trying to make a scene, I just wanted my kids treated the same as everyone else's. She snapped back, "If you don't like how I host, you don't have to come." No one said a word. I sat back down, shaking, wondering if I just ruined Christmas, or finally stood up for my kids. After dessert, my ML barely spoke to me. My SL avoided eye contact. My husband was quiet the entire drive home. And then, once we got home, he finally said something that made my stomach drop. "You should have just let it go." That's when I realized, this wasn't just about Christmas dinner anymore. The second my husband said, "You should have just let it go," something inside me broke. I asked him, calmly at first, why my kids always had to be the ones to let it go. Why they were the ones sent out of sight while his sister's kids were treated like honored guests. He sighed and said, "It's just how my mom is. You know that." That answer made me angry in a way I hadn't felt before. I reminded him that our oldest is almost the same age as his nephew. That our kids notice these things. That being quietly excluded year after year teaches them exactly where they stand in the family. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said something worse. My mom just connects more with my sister's kids. I asked him why that was okay. He didn't have an answer. The next day, I got a text from my mother-in-law. Not an apology. Not even a conversation. It said, "I've been hosting Christmas for a long time. I won't be criticized in my own home. If you attend in the future, please respect my traditions." I showed it to my husband. He told me to ignore it. But then my daughter overheard us talking. She asked, "Are we in trouble with Grandma?" That question sealed it for me. Later that night, I told my husband that next year, I wasn't sending our kids to the basement again. Either we all sit together, or we don't go. He looked shocked, like I'd suggested something extreme. He said, "So you're giving me an ultimatum?" I said, "No. I'm protecting our kids." We went to bed angry and silent. Over the next few days, more messages came in. My sister-in-law texted that I had embarrassed their mom. An aunt messaged saying I was disrespectful. Not one person asked how my kids felt. Except my oldest. He asked quietly, "If we don't go next year, will we finally get to have Christmas upstairs?" That's when I realized something important. This wasn't about seating. It was about whether my kids would grow up believing they deserved to be included. And now, Christmas was coming again, and a decision had to be made. By the time November rolled around, the tension was still there, quiet, heavy, unresolved. My mother-in-law never brought up what happened last Christmas. Neither did my sister-in-law. The unspoken assumption was clear. Things would go back to normal, and I'd fallen back in line. I hadn't. When my ML sent the usual group text. "Christmas dinner at my place. Same arrangements as always." I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I replied, "Thank you for the invitation, but this year we'll be staying home and celebrating as a family." That was it. No accusations. No explanations. The fallout was immediate. My ML called my husband in tears, saying I was tearing the family apart. My SL accused me of being petty and dramatic. A cousin even suggested we stop punishing the kids over adult issues. That one made me laugh bitterly, because the kids were the reason we made this choice. On Christmas morning, there was no rushing. No forced smiles. No basement. We stayed in pajamas. The kids helped cook breakfast. We played board games at the same table, one table, and everyone was included. At one point, my 13-year-old looked around and said, "This is the best Christmas we've had." My husband noticed it too. Later that day, he apologized. Not just for what he said, but for every year he stayed quiet. He admitted he'd normalized it because it was easier than standing up to his mother. We agreed on new boundaries going forward. We don't attend events where our kids are treated as less than. No explanations required. A week later, my ML finally reached out, not to apologize, but to ask if we'd be coming next year. I told her, if we're all welcome at the same table, yes. She hasn't replied. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Because this year, my kids learned something important. That their parents will choose them, even when it's uncomfortable. And for me, that's the only Christmas tradition that actually matters. If this story kept you hooked, give it a like, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more.